My son refused to let me enter his house and said my presence would make everything awkward. So, I canceled his 139 automatic payments and watched his perfect life collapse right before my eyes. For 6 years, I financed my son's luxury lifestyle while I lived like a broke, bitter man. That's when I understood what I had built I could also tear down. And I created a plan to make my own son face the consequences. I'm glad you're here. At what age does your child stop being your responsibility? My son was 42 with a 6-figure income, yet I still covered everything. Comment: when should parents finally say, "You're on your own"? This is fictional exploring parental boundaries. Though the questions remain relevant, the smell of fried onions and melted was filled my Civic as I drove toward Benmar. 2 cheesesteaks from Gino's resting in the passenger seat. Brandon used to beg for these when he was 10 with extra pickles the way we'd eat them in the car because we couldn't afford to sit down inside. That was before Courtney, before the mainline, before I became the ATM nobody wanted around. I took the exit and watched the neighborhoods change Fishtown to Roxborough to Benmore, where the houses have landscaping budgets bigger than my pension and the cars cost more than I made in 2 years at the post office. Brandon's place stood at the end of a cul-de-sac, all stone and glass and money. I pulled up beside the Range Rover, $150 a month, Courtney's necessity, and turned off my engine. My oxidized Civic looked like something that should have been donated to charity in 2015. I grabbed the bag and walked along the stone pathway past the boxwoods I paid Raphael to trim. The motion sensor light clicked on as I pressed the doorbell that played some classical tune Courtney special ordered from Connecticut. The door opened 3 in, not halfway, not a foot, 3 in, held by Courtney's French manicured hand, her diamond tennis bracelet catching the light like a tiny chandelier. That bracelet cost more than my first car. Vincent. My name sounded like an apology she didn't mean. Tonight's really not ideal. I held up the bag. Brought Brandon's favorite gauze. Still hot. That's thoughtful, but Lily's already in bed and we really need to preserve our evening routine. Brandon and I have been working on creating more intentional space. She said it like she was reading from one of those wellness blogs. She was always posting the ones where she wore 1000 athleisure and pretended green juice tasted good. Through that 3 inches gap, I could see into the foyer I'd refinanced my house to build. The chandelier I'd paid to install, the hardwood floors I'd covered with my pension, and Brandon standing 10 foot behind his wife like a shadow staring at everything except me. Brandon. I called past Courtney. You hungry? He shifted his weight, cleared his throat, adjusted a tie he wasn't wearing. Dad, maybe this weekend. We've got an early morning. Your father was just leaving. Courtney interrupted, her voice dripping with poisoned honey. Vincent, you need to understand Brandon's at a very delicate point in his career. We can't have unexpected visits disrupting the household. Perhaps you could text before stopping by. Give us a chance to prepare. Prepare like I was a storm warning. A pop quiz. I looked past her and stared at the photograph on the wall, blown up to poster size, professionally framed in something that probably cost a week's salary. Brandon, Courtney, and Lily at Disney World last summer. Every meal, every overpriced souvenir, every photo with sweating characters in costumes, I paid for all of it. The trip that cost more than my first year of college. The trip I wasn't invited to. In that photo, they looked like a magazine advertisement. Lily's smile, genuine. She was 16, still believed in magic if you paid enough. Courtney looked like she'd been born wearing mouse ears and designer sunglasses. And Brandon looked proud, successful, like a man who'd built his own kingdom instead of mortgaging his father's life for the down payment. I wasn't in it. Wasn't anywhere in their perfect narrative. Just the ghost in the background. The signature on the credit card receipt. Dad. Brandon's voice cracked. For 1 second, I saw my son again. The kid who sat on my shoulders during the Mummers Parade, who told me I was his hero. Then Courtney's hand touched his arm and he went silent. It's fine, I said, steadier than I felt. I understand. You need your space. Courtney smiled, relieved. I knew you'd be reasonable. That's what makes you such a wonderful father-in-law. The door began to close. Courtney, I stopped her. That word you used, uncomfortable. You said my being here makes people uncomfortable. Well, I meant I know what you meant. I adjusted my grip on the bag nobody wanted. I just think maybe it's time everyone learned what uncomfortable really means. I didn't wait for her response. Just turned and walked back to my car. The motion sensor light clicking off behind me like someone killing the stage lights after the show's finished. I sat in my Civic for a long time, gripping the steering wheel until my knuckles turned white, staring at that house, that monument to everything I'd given and everything they'd taken. The cheesesteaks were getting cold beside me. Grease seeping through the paper. The smell that seemed so good 30 minutes ago now making my stomach twist. 6 years since Kathy died. 6 years since I'd stood at her grave and promised I'd take care of our boy. I'd kept that promise. Given him everything she left me. Her life insurance, her inheritance, our future. Given him comfort and security and a life she would have been proud of. Except she wouldn't have been proud. She would have seen what I was too blind to see, that I wasn't helping our son. I was destroying him slowly. With every check I signed, every bill I paid, every piece of myself I handed over like it didn't matter. I started the engine and pulled out of that perfect cul-de-sac with its perfect houses and its perfect lies, driving back toward Fishtown where people said hello to their neighbors and nobody needed an appointment to bring dinner. The entire way home, I kept thinking about that word uncomfortable. They were about to learn what it meant. They were about to learn what it cost. And for the first time in 6 years, I felt something shift inside my chest. Not anger, not even hurt, just clarity. Cold, sharp, and absolutely certain. I woke at 5:30, same as I had for 35 years. Body clock trained by decades of pre-dawn mail routes. But this morning felt different, heavier, like the walls sensed something had shifted. I sat at the kitchen table with my coffee black, no sugar, same cracked cup Kathy bought me in 1989. The Formica tabletop had a burn from the previous owner and a water ring we never quite scrubbed away. This was where Kathy sat during those last months too weak to climb stairs, where Brandon did his 5th grade math homework, eraser shavings everywhere. That table had seen birthdays, arguments, grief so thick you could taste it. It was about to see one more thing. I opened the drawer that always stuck and pulled out the folder. Plain manila labeled family expenses in black Sharpie. I'd started it 6 years ago when Brandon first asked for help with his down payment. Just temporarily, just until he got established. Temporarily had stretched into 72 months. I spread the bank statements across the table and grabbed my yellow legal pad, started writing by hand, the way I'd learned to track registered mail. When you write something down, you can't pretend you didn't see it. Benmore Mortgage, $5,200 per month. The house with the 3 inches gap in the doorway that said you don't belong here. Range Rover lease, $1,150 per month. Porsche Cayenne lease, $950 per month, 2 cars, both in my name because Brandon's credit couldn't handle it. Shipley school tuition, $4,200 per month, $50,000 a year for Lily to be around the right kind of people. Fishtown High had been good enough for Brandon. Marion Golf Club, $1,200 per month. Brandon didn't even like golf, but Courtney said it was essential for networking. I kept writing. Insurance policies, property taxes, HOA fees for a gated community with actual guards, house cleaner, 3 times a week, landscaping, pool maintenance, streaming services, meal kits, wine clubs, personal trainers, Botox appointments. I was paying for my daughter-in-law's Botox. I added it up, checked it twice, then a third time because my brain kept rejecting the number. $172 recurring automatic payments. $19,200 per month. $1,382,400 over 6 years. I wrote it on the folder in numbers so large they took up half the page. Stared at it, trying to make my mind accept what my eyes were seeing. $13 million. Where had it come from? I pulled out the other folder. Kathy's legacy and her handwriting from when she'd been strong enough to hold a pen. Life insurance $800,000. Kathy's death benefit money. She'd worked herself half to death to ensure I'd have TSP withdrawal $250,000. My retirement savings earned carrying mail through ice storms and heat waves. Home equity loan $180,000. This house paid off over 30 years. Now mortgaged again. Personal savings $100. Zero every penny tucked away in coffee cans and the envelope in Kathy's recipe box. Inheritance $520,400 from Kathy's father, who worked at the Navy Yard 40 years and never bought a new car. I'd taken everything Kathy left me, every dream of finally traveling, every cushion against disaster. Every promise that old age wouldn't mean poverty, and fed it into Brandon's life like quarters into a slot machine that never paid out. The refrigerator kicked on with a wheeze. 22 years old. Light burned out for 3 years. Seal so worn I could feel cold air on my ankles. But it still worked. That's what you did when you grew up. The way I did, you used things until they died. I looked at my feet. Work socks from Walmart six-pack. I darned the heels twice because throwing away socks with holes seemed wasteful when you could get another year out of them. My hands were shaking. Not from cold, from rage so pure it felt like something solid in my chest. Something with weight and edges sharp enough to cut. I closed the folder. Just paper touching paper. Just manila cardboard meeting wood veneer. But in the silence of my kitchen in the house where I'd raised my son, where I'd loved my wife, that small sound felt final. Like a door closing, like a gavel falling. I stood up, dumped the cold coffee in the sink, and put on my coat. Citizens Bank opened at 9 o'clock on Saturdays. I had 3 hours to shower, shave, and practice what I was going to say to Mark Williams when I asked him to cancel every single automatic payment tied to my name, all 172 of them. The clarity from last night hadn't faded. It had crystallized into something harder, something that couldn't be talked out of, reasoned with, or guilted into changing its mind. My son needed to learn what I'd learned at his age. That money isn't love, and love isn't money. And sometimes the kindest thing you can do for someone drowning is stop throwing them anchors disguised as life preservers. I left the folder on the table. Didn't hide it. Let it sit there in the morning light, numbers visible, truth undeniable. By 8:30, I'd made my peace with what was coming, the storm, the anger, the accusations, all of it. Because for the first time in 6 years, I wasn't asking what Kathy would have wanted. I was asking what I needed. And what I needed was to stop being the reason they never learned to swim. What I needed was to stop drowning beside them. Mark Williams was unlocking the front door when I pulled into the Citizens Bank parking lot. He looked up surprised to see anyone at 9 on a Saturday morning. "Vincent," he waved. "You're up early. Everything okay?" I walked across the lot, folder under my arm. "Need to make some changes, Mark?" "Significant ones." Something in my voice made him pause. We'd known each other 20 years. He'd processed Kathy's accounts, sent a card when she died. He knew me as the quiet guy who never caused trouble. He held the door open. "Come on in." The bank smelled like carpet cleaner and burnt coffee. Saturday skeleton crew, just Mark and maybe one teller in back. He led me to his office and I sat down, placing the folder on his desk. "Dear Mark, I need you to cancel every automatic payment linked to my accounts. All of them today." He pulled up my account, clicked through screens. His face went from confusion to concern to shock. "Vincent." He looked over his reading glasses. "You've got 139 recurring payments running through here. Mortgage, car leases, insurance memberships." He kept scrolling. "And this is funding someone's entire life." "My son's life," I said, "and his wife's. I want them all canceled. Every single one. Some of these are major obligations. The mortgage alone is $5,200 a month. If that bounces, I know. Car leases could be repossessed. I know. This school tuition, they don't mess around. Mark. I met his eyes. I know exactly what I'm doing and I need you to help me do it. He stared at me, then pulled out a form and started writing. Okay, this will take a while. Each cancellation needs individual processing. I've got time. For 6 years, I'd given all my time to people who couldn't even let me through their front door. Mark worked through the list. Mortgage, car leases, school tuition, golf club, house services, insurance policies, subscriptions. Every time he read one aloud, something loosened in my chest. After what felt like an hour, he looked up. All 139 automatic payments canceled. But Vincent, you've got Brandon listed as your power of attorney. If he has that authority, he could potentially reverse these decisions. I'd thought of that during my 3 hours of planning. Revoke it. You sure POA is serious? It means you trusted him to make financial and medical decisions if you couldn't. I trusted him with a lot of things, Mark. Time to start trusting myself instead. He processed the revocation, made me sign in 3 places, had his assistant notarize it. Done. Brandon no longer has power of attorney. Life insurance policy. I need to change the beneficiary. He pulled it up. Currently, Brandon's primary, Lily's secondary. You want to swap them? No. Lily is the only beneficiary. Remove Brandon entirely. Mark's hand hovered over the keyboard. Vincent, that's your son. I know who he is. My voice came out harder than I meant. And I know what he's become. My granddaughter deserves to know that someone in this family kept their promises. She deserves to know love isn't measured in dollar signs. Mark typed the changes. Done. Lily Carter's sole beneficiary. One more thing. The joint account, the one Courtney has access to, the one ending in 4721. Close it. Transfer whatever's left to my primary checking today. He checked the balance. About $1,800. You want it closed completely? That means Courtney won't have access to any funds through this bank. That's the point. He processed it, printed confirmations, slid them across the desk. I looked at the papers. Revocation of power of attorney, life insurance change, account closure, cancellation confirmations for 139 payments, just paper, just ink and signatures. But it felt like cutting chains. Mark leaned forward. Vincent, I have to ask. Are you sure? Because this is the nuclear option. Everything you just did will cause immediate catastrophic consequences. Mortgage defaults, repossessions, credit destruction. They're going to collapse. Maybe they need to. They're going to be furious. Let them, Vincent, his voice softened. I've known you a long time. This isn't like you. No, it's not. The old me would have kept writing checks until I died broke and alone. The old me believed money was the same thing as love. I stood up, gathered my papers, but I'm done with that. He walked me to the door. For what it's worth, whatever led you here, I hope it works out. I hope they learn what they need to learn. So do I. I stepped outside into October sunshine. Perfect fall day. Cool air, blue sky, leaves starting to turn. Girard Avenue was waking up corner stores. Opening neighbors on stoops. Someone's radio playing Motown. I walked half a block to the coffee shop that had been there 40 years where they still charged reasonable prices. Morning, Vincent, Maria called. The usual. And a glazed donut, the big one. She raised an eyebrow. I never ordered food, but wrapped it up. $4.75. I handed her a $5. Keep the change. I sat on the bench outside with my coffee and donut and took a bite. Sweet, soft, probably more sugar than I'd eaten in a month. It was perfect. For 6 years, I denied myself everything. Every small pleasure, every unnecessary expense. I'd saved it all for Brandon, for Courtney, for a life I wasn't invited to be part of. This donut cost less than Courtney's monthly meditation app subscription. But it tasted like freedom, like the first breath after being underwater too long, like taking back something that was always mine. I finished my coffee, threw the cup away, and walked back to my car. The folder sat on the passenger seat. Proof of everything I'd just done, everything I'd just undone. My phone was silent. They didn't know yet. Probably wouldn't until Monday when the first payment bounced. Maybe not until the school called about tuition. Or the bank called about the mortgage, or the leasing company came for the cars. But they'd know soon enough. And when they did, when the call started and the accusations flew and the reality came crashing down, I'd be right here in Fishtown in the house I'd almost lost to keep them comfortable, drinking my $4 coffee and remembering what it felt like to choose myself for once. For the first time in 6 years, I wasn't asking what Kathy would have wanted. I was asking what I deserved. And what I deserved was to stop setting myself on fire to keep other people warm. I sat in my armchair, the one Kathy and I bought at a yard sale in 1987, reupholstered twice with a book I'd been meaning to read for 3 years. I'd never opened it, too busy tracking payments, managing transfers, making sure Brandon's world kept spinning while mine stood still. But today I had time. The house was quiet. Not the lonely quiet since Kathy died, but the quiet of a storm passing. Of finally being able to hear yourself think. I was 40 pages in when my phone buzzed. 6:45 p.m. Courtney, Dad. Our streaming service isn't working. Says payment declined. Can you check? I looked at it. Set the phone face down. Went back to my book. My phone buzzed again. 7:15 p.m. Brandon, electric bill overdue. They're cutting power in 48 hours. Can you handle this tonight? I read the message. Felt nothing where guilt used to live. Set the phone down. By 8 o'clock, my phone was buzzing every 15 minutes. 8 p.m. Courtney, Range Rover payment declined. Lease in default. 8:17 p.m. Brandon. Dad, something's wrong. Multiple payments bouncing. Call me. 8:45 p.m. Courtney, golf club suspended for non-payment. What is happening? 9:30 p.m. Brandon, Dad. Call me now. Something is very wrong. I got up, went to the kitchen, made myself dinner. Scrambled eggs, toast the good jam I'd been saving. $8 a jar I used to think was too expensive for just me. It tasted better than anything I'd eaten in months. The phone kept buzzing in the other room, muffled, persistent as a fly against the window. I washed my dishes, dried them, put them away, went back to my book. I fell asleep in my chair around 11 o'clock. Sunday morning, I woke to 14 missed calls. I made coffee, scrambled eggs, scrolled through the call log. Brandon, Courtney, Brandon, Brandon, Courtney, Brandon again. One voicemail. I almost didn't listen, but curiosity is powerful. Dad. Brandon's voice was shaking. Not angry yet, just scared. Dad, I don't know what's happening, but every payment you've been making, everything, it's all been declined. The mortgage, the cars, Lily's school, everything. I can't. His voice cracked. Please call me back. We need to fix this. Just please fix it. Like it was a mistake, a glitch, an error that could be corrected with one phone call, one check signed by a father who couldn't say no. I deleted the voicemail. Then I went outside. The roses were overgrown. Kathy had planted them the year before she got sick. 6 bushes along the fence, pink and yellow and red. I'd been keeping them alive, but hadn't properly pruned them in 2 years. Too busy, too tired. I got the shears from the shed. Pruning roses is simple but brutal. You cut away everything dead or diseased, everything stealing resources from the healthy parts. It looks violent, all those branches falling, but it's not. It's mercy. You prune so the plant can live. I started with the pink bush, Kathy's favorite. Cut away the dead wood, the crossing branches, the growth going nowhere. The thorns caught my hands, drew blood. With each cut, I thought about Brandon, the boy who used to help me in this garden, complaining about thorns, but working anyway. The man who'd forgotten where he came from, who'd built his life on my back and called it success. I wasn't angry. That was the strange part. I was just done. Done being the root system for someone else's flowers. Done pouring everything into soil that gave nothing back. Done pretending money was the same thing as love. I finished the pink roses, moved to the yellow, then the red. By the time I was done, the bushes looked naked, wounded, but they'd grow back stronger. That's what happens when you cut away what's killing them. My phone was ringing inside. I could hear it through the window. I gathered the dead branches, tied them with twine, set them by the curb for trash pickup. The phone kept ringing. I went inside, washed my hands, cuts from thorns stinging underwater, and made a sandwich. 6:15 p.m. Brandon, Dad, where are you? 6:47 p.m. Courtney, this is ridiculous. We need to talk now. 7:30 p.m. Brandon's school called. Lily's tuition bounced. She's going to be humiliated. Is that what you want? I didn't answer. Didn't pick up the phone to read them properly. I just knew they were there. Knew they were panicking. Knew that somewhere in Benmar in the house I'd paid for my son was finally understanding what it felt like when the ground disappeared beneath your feet. By 9 o'clock, the phone had rung 17 times. I turned it off. Upstairs, I pulled back the quilt. Kathy's mother had made patchwork of old dresses and shirts stitched with love and patience. I climbed into bed into sheets I'd washed myself in a house I'd paid for with my own hands. No shame, no remorse, no whisper wondering what Kathy might say, because I knew she would say I should have acted like this 5 years earlier. She would think I had finally remembered the man I used to be. I slept better that night than any time in the previous 6 years. Deep, quiet, dreamless rest. And when Monday morning arrived with 32 missed calls and a message from Brandon saying he was coming over to sort everything out, I cooked breakfast, sipped my coffee slowly, and waited. Let him come. I wasn't hiding and I wasn't running. I had simply stopped chasing people who kept walking away. The strange thing about pulling a loose thread is you never see how much is attached until the entire carpet begins coming apart. I learned that while watching my son's life unravel, one canceled service at a time. Day 3 after our confrontation, the entertainment subscription stopped working. I didn't learn that directly because Brandon never called to explain it, but I could imagine it clearly. Courtney settling into their leather couch, clicking the remote, discovering every streaming platform locked with payment declined flashing repeatedly across the screen. The quiet embarrassment of explaining to Lily why they couldn't finish the show they were watching. I was standing in my kitchen preparing lunch, a tuna sandwich, the same lunch I'd eaten for 30 years, when my phone buzzed. Brandon's streaming accounts aren't working. Can you check if there is a billing problem? I studied the message for a long time. Watched the 3 dots appear and disappear as he typed something new, erased it, then typed again. Brandon, never mind. I placed the phone face down and took a bite of my sandwich. Day 5, the landscaping company called Brandon. I knew that because Mrs. Washington told me she had seen the lawn crew loading their equipment back into the truck after barely 10 minutes. Never seen that happen in Benmore before, she said, shaking her head. Those people pay their bills on time. Not anymore. My phone buzzed again that evening. Courtney, the yard company says we owe them $1,200 and they won't return until it is paid. Can you please call them? There must be some mistake. No mistake, only consequences. I deleted the message. Day 7, the bank alert arrived. Not to me because I had removed my name from everything, but Brandon forwarded a screenshot of the notice. First payment attempt for vehicle lease returned because of insufficient funds. Second attempt will occur in 48 hours. Failure to satisfy payment could lead to repossession. That message came with a note. Brandon, Dad, please. I'm trying to manage this, but I need time. Can you just cover the car payment this month? I will figure out the rest. Just this month. Just this once. Those words had ruled my life for 6 years. I stared at the message, imagining the Range Rover being pulled from the Benmore driveway. Imagined the neighbors watching. Imagined Lily asking questions. My finger hovered above the keyboard. Then I deleted the message, but the requests did not stop. They changed, grew sharper, more urgent. Courtney, can you send $500? We need groceries, and my card was declined at Whole Foods. Brandon, electric bill is $380. Can you transfer it just this once? I will pay you back. Courtney, Lily needs new gym shoes for school, $120 please. They realized the bank would not process the automatic transfers anymore, so they tried manual requests, searching for a weak point. Each message felt like a small blade. $500 for groceries while I lived on $40 a week. $380 for power while my bill rarely reached $95. $120 for shoes while I wore the same boots for 5 years. Delete. Delete. My thumb knew the movement. My heart understood something harder, because this is the part nobody explains about boundaries. Holding them feels like slowly killing something you love. Every notification makes you wonder if you are a father teaching a lesson or a monster watching his son drown. I sat at my kitchen table, that old Formica surface witness to decades of family life, and opened the deleted folder. 23 messages in 4 days. Requests ranging from $50 to $2,000. Each message describing some new consequence. Lily's tuition due. Water service about to be shut off. Courtney's mother demanding repayment for money she loaned them. That last message stopped me cold. They had been borrowing from her parents too. How deep did the hole go? How many people were they using? My phone rang. Not a message this time, but an actual call. Brandon's name on the screen. I let it ring once, then again. On the third call I nearly answered. Almost. Because fathers answer when their sons call. But then I remembered that Friday night. The door opening only 3 inches. Courtney's face blocking the entrance. Brandon standing behind her like a shadow. I let the call go. The voicemail notice appeared, but I did not play it. I already knew what it contained. Another version of please wrapped inside another promise that things would change. It would not change unless something deeper shifted. Unless they learned what I learned too late. You cannot build your life on another person's back. You cannot claim to love someone while draining them dry. Money is not family. And family is not an endless machine that prints cash. By the 7th day my phone felt like a battlefield. Every alert another fight to win. Delete, block, ignore. The discipline was exhausting, but the guilt was worse. Because each message I erased made me imagine Brandon realizing I would not respond. Every unanswered call made me picture him telling Courtney he really will not help. Each silence made me imagine Lily asking why Grandpa would not answer. Was I punishing them or freeing them? Was I teaching them to stand alone or teaching them that love had limits? I did not know. I still do not. All I knew was that if I answered even once, if I sent a single transfer, paid one bill, everything would collapse back to the beginning. So I sat at that table as the 7th day faded into night, watching my phone glow, again and again, with increasingly desperate messages. And I did the hardest thing I have ever done. Nothing. I did absolutely nothing. I repeated to myself like a prayer that this nothing mattered. That this silence could teach them something my words never could. That the emptiness would force them to discover who they were without someone carrying them. I had to believe it, because if I did not, then all of this pain meant destroying my relationship with my son for nothing. The phone buzzed once more. Brandon, I know you see these. I know you are ignoring them intentionally. Fine, we will solve it ourselves. But when this is over, do not expect me to forget that you did this. I read it twice. Then I powered off my phone completely, walked upstairs, lay on the bed beneath Kathy's mother's quilt, and stared at the ceiling, trying to remember if there was ever a gentle way to watch your child fall. Trying to believe that sometimes love means stepping back and letting gravity teach lessons you cannot. Hoping that somewhere at the bottom of the fall there would be solid ground. Not certainty, only faith. It would have to be enough. Sunday morning, Bill Thompson slid into the pew beside me 5 minutes before the service began. After the final blessing, he touched my elbow. Coffee? It was not a question, it was concern. We walked to the diner that had stood there since the 1960s. Bill waited until we were seated and the coffee poured before looking at me with those teacher eyes. You look terrible, Vincent. I wrapped my hands around the mug. I keep wondering if this is the right choice. Watching them struggle, knowing I could fix everything with one call, knowing Lily is trapped in the middle. But you are not fixing it. No. Good. Bill stirred sugar into his coffee. Vincent, you are not harming him, you are waking him up. Sometimes love means letting go so someone can stand alone. That is not cruelty, that is faith, faith that he will not hate me. Faith that the boy you raised still exists somewhere beneath all that entitlement and fear. Bill took a sip. And if he hates you for a while, that is the price. You are not abandoning him. You are forcing him to look in the mirror. I sat quietly thinking about that while the diner buzzed around us, plates clattering, voices overlapping. What if I am wrong? Then you are wrong. But at least you will be wrong while respecting yourself instead of draining yourself dry. I needed those words because week 2 was about to become worse. Day 9, the tow truck arrived for the Range Rover. Mrs. Washington's sister saw everything happen right there in the driveway in the middle of the afternoon. Everyone watching. Public humiliation. Neighbors realizing the Carters were not as successful as they appeared. Day 11, the house staff disappeared. The cleaner who visited 3 times weekly, the pool technician, the landscaping crew, all gone. You cannot pay workers with promises. Appearances cannot survive once the foundation collapses. My phone began buzzing differently. Not requests anymore, accusations. Brandon Carr's repossessed, satisfied now? Courtney house falling apart, hope you are pleased. Then came the message I knew would arrive. Brandon fine, punish me, but what about Lily? School called, tuition overdue, $25,200. They will expel her Friday if we do not pay. I do not have it, Dad. So what will it be? Are you going to let your granddaughter get thrown out just to prove a point? I stared at the message for a long time. $25,200. I had that amount sitting quietly in my account. I could transfer it in minutes. I could spare Lily embarrassment, disruption, pain. My finger hovered above the keyboard. Then the phone rang. Unknown number. M. R. Carter, a woman's voice said, calm, professional, tired. This is Miss Bennett from Shipley School calling regarding Lily's account. My heart sank. Yes, we have a significant balance outstanding, $25,200. If the balance is not resolved by Friday, Lily will need to withdraw. I understand, Mr. Carter. I am calling because your son has not responded to our notices and you are listed as the person who previously made payments. I wanted to contact you directly. I could hear Bill's words in my mind. I could hear Kathy's voice. I could hear my own statement from that Monday morning. The world owes you nothing and neither do I. Miss Bennett, I said, trying to keep my voice steady, you need to speak directly with Brandon Carter about this. We have tried. He says he is working on it, but then he stops answering. Mr. Carter, with respect, if the account is not settled. I understand, but I am not the person responsible for settling it. Brandon is Lily's father. He must handle this matter with you. Silence filled the line long enough that I thought she disconnected. Are you telling me you will not cover the tuition? I am saying I no longer have authority over that account. Brandon must address this directly. More silence, then a quiet reply. I see. Thank you for your time, Mr. Carter. She hung up. I set the phone down. My hands were shaking, actually trembling, as if I had lifted something heavy instead of simply saying no. $25,200. I had the money sitting there ready. I could save Lily right now, but Bill's words echoed, sometimes love looks like letting go so they can stand on their own. If I paid now, if I rushed in to rescue Lily, what lesson would Brandon learn? That he could always use his daughter as leverage. That enough guilt would force me to surrender. That no never really meant no. My phone buzzed. Brandon, I didn't read it. I simply placed it face down and walked toward the window. Lily would survive. Public school was not a tragedy. Thousands of children succeeded there. I had. Brandon had. She would too. And maybe losing Shipley would finally make Brandon realize his daughter didn't need a $50,000 education. She needed a father who knew how to stand on his own feet. My hand still trembled. But beneath the shaking, beneath the guilt and doubt and fear, beneath all of that was something firm, something that felt like integrity, like dignity. Like finally, after 6 years of living as a wallet instead of a father, I was remembering what it meant to care enough about someone to let them fall, even when it hurt. Especially when it hurt. Mark Williams' voice on the phone was not the calm professional banker tone I knew. It sounded tight and urgent. Vincent, can you come to the bank immediately? I just discovered something very wrong. 20 minutes later I was sitting across from Mark in his glass office, the same place where I had canceled everything 3 weeks earlier. But this time Mark's expression was different. Not worried. Angry. I've been reviewing your older accounts, he said, trying to confirm we handled everything when we revoked Brandon's power of attorney. And I found withdrawals. Vince, I found withdrawals I don't think you approved. He turned his computer screen toward me. A spreadsheet filled the monitor, rows and rows of transactions highlighted yellow cash withdrawals, Mark explained, made using the power of attorney authority during the last 2 years. My stomach dropped. How much? Mark hesitated before answering. $75,000. The number hung between us like heavy smoke. I could barely breathe around it. Show me that. He clicked through the statements. March last year, $5,000 cash withdrawal authorized by Brandon Carter, power of attorney. June, $10,000. September, $8,000. The list continued. Sometimes $3,000. Sometimes $7,000. Never identical amounts. Never consistent timing. Small enough to hide among the other payments. Large enough to accumulate quietly. These were all beyond the automatic payments you were already making, Mark said softly. These were separate additional withdrawals. I stared at the screen calculating. $19,200 every month I knowingly paid them, plus another $3,000 or so monthly I never noticed. Over 2 years, $75,000 taken while I slept. Vincent, Mark said gently but firmly, this is elder financial abuse. It's a crime. If you want, if you need, we can report it to the police right now. I have a detective I work with for cases like this. One call. Cases like this, I repeated quietly. My voice sounded distant. Power of attorney abuse. It happens more than people realize. Adult children with access. Parents who trust too easily. Mark slid a business card across the desk. Detective Sarah Morrison, Financial Crimes Unit. You don't have to decide immediately, but Vincent, you should understand this isn't just taking advantage. This is theft. Criminal theft. I picked up the card. The paper felt light, almost meaningless. One call. One conversation. My son in handcuffs. Where did it go? I asked. The money. Do you know? Mark shook his head. Cash withdrawals don't leave much of a trail. He might have deposited it elsewhere, spent it, gambled it. We don't know. But I knew. Investment opportunities, I'd say. And you never checked. You trusted me. That hurt worse than the theft. He knew I wouldn't look, wouldn't question. And that's not everything, I said. You lost your job 2 weeks ago. His head snapped up. How? Stephen Crawford called me. Your boss said your work had been declining for months. Professional ethics violation. Couldn't concentrate, missed deadlines. I pulled out the detective's card, let him see it, and Courtney, I continued. She knew, didn't she, about the gambling? Fear crossed his face. She found out 6 months ago. Went through my phone. Brandon's voice grew smaller. I thought she'd leave, but she said if I wanted to keep gambling, fine. But I had to keep buying her things. Jewelry, spa trips, maintain appearances. He looked up at me. She said if I didn't, she'd take Lily, file for full custody, tell the courts about the gambling. I'd never see my daughter again. Courtney hadn't simply been living off my money. She had been blackmailing my son with it. So you kept stealing from me, I said. To pay gambling debts and buy your wife's silence. I'm sorry. Brandon was sobbing now. Dad, I'm so sorry. I didn't know how to stop. Couldn't stop gambling. Couldn't stop Courtney. Couldn't tell you because you'd already given me so much and I'd wasted it. Gambled it away. And I couldn't face you. Couldn't admit I'm a failure, a thief. I looked at him, saw the boy who once helped me rake leaves, saw the man at his mother's grave promising to make her proud, and saw a stranger who stole $75,000 from his father and lied for 2 years. I placed the detective's card on the coffee table beside the bank statements. Elder financial abuse, I said. That's what they call it. A crime. I could call Detective Morrison right now. You'd be arrested, charged, convicted. Courtney would take Lily. You'd lose everything. Brandon stared at the card like a loaded weapon. Please, he whispered. Dad, please. You're 42 years old, had a good job, a beautiful daughter, and you threw it all away for cards, for the thrill of risking money you never earned. I need help. I know I need help, but I don't know how without losing everything. You've already lost everything, I said. Your house, your cars, your job, your dignity. The only question is whether you lose your daughter too and me. Are you going to call? I held the card. Brandon watched like a man watching a judge reach for the gavel. Not today, I said. Dad, not because you deserve mercy. Not because this is forgivable. But because calling police would be too easy. You'd go to jail. I'd feel righteous. But you wouldn't change. You'd only be punished. And punishment doesn't cure addiction. I slipped the card into my pocket, not throwing it away, keeping it as an option. I'm leaving now. You have a choice. Keep lying. Keep gambling. Keep letting Courtney control you, or get help. Real help. Gamblers Anonymous, therapy. Whatever it takes to become someone your daughter can respect. I walked to the door, paused. I'm not giving you another dime, I said. Not for rent, not for food, not for Lily. You want to be her father? Earn it. Figure out how to stand on your own. Dad. His voice was broken. How do I start? You wake up tomorrow and do the next right thing, and then the next one, until doing right things becomes more natural than doing wrong ones. I opened the door and Brandon, I looked back. This is the last time I save you. Next time you fall, you crawl out yourself. Or you don't. That's not my decision anymore. It's yours. I left him there, walked to my car, got in, started the engine. The detective's card was in my pocket. I didn't call. Not because I was weak. Not because I'd forgiven him. I didn't call because for the first time in 40 years, I understood something essential about being a father. You can't rescue someone from themselves. You can only step back and allow them to decide whether they want to be rescued. Sometimes the most loving thing you can do is let them fall completely until they hit the bottom and must choose, stay down or climb back up. I'd spent 6 years, maybe 42 years, building safety nets, softening falls, making sure Brandon never struck the ground hard enough to hurt. All I'd done was teach him that falling didn't matter, that consequences weren't real, that Dad would always catch him. Not anymore. Now, if he wanted to climb out of this pit of addiction and theft and lies, he would have to do it alone. I'd be there when he reached the top, if he reached the top. But I wouldn't be down there with him. Wouldn't throw him a rope. Wouldn't make the climb easier, because the only way he would learn to stand was if no one else held him up. I drove home, made dinner, went to bed, and for the first time since this began, I didn't feel guilty. I felt like a father. They say trouble arrives in threes. The same week I discovered the embezzlement. The same week I watched my son confess to stealing $75,000. Everything else collapsed too. Wednesday afternoon, Stephen Crawford called. Vincent, I wanted you to know Brandon's termination happened week 1 right after whatever occurred between you two. My stomach dropped. I didn't realize it was that long ago. His performance had been declining for months. Missed deadlines, client complaints. The final straw was using company resources for gambling sites during work hours. Stephen sighed. His career in finance is essentially finished. Word travels. No firm will hire him. A banker who couldn't manage his own money. Some people must reach rock bottom before they're willing to change, Stephen said. I thanked him, hung up, stared at my kitchen wall. Rock bottom. I thought cutting off money was rock bottom. Apparently we weren't there yet. Thursday evening someone pounded on my door. Courtney. No designer clothes this time. Jeans, plain shirt. She looked smaller without the armor of expensive things and far angrier. This is your fault, she said, pushing past me. All of it. You destroyed our lives. I stopped enabling theft. Enabling? You built that life for us. Then you ripped it away like we were puppets. She gestured around my living room while judging us from your moral high ground in this dump. The word struck like a slap. This dump. The house Kathy and I built our life in. Get out, I said quietly. Gladly. I'm leaving. Going back to my parents in California because I didn't marry a broke unemployed gambler living in a one-bedroom apartment. She grabbed her purse. Lily can stay with her loser father and learn what it feels like to be poor. You're taking Lily. I'm taking myself. Lily can stay with Brandon. Courtney, whatever happens to Brandon now, that's on you. You broke him. So when he drinks himself to death, remember you're the one who decided tough love mattered more than family. She slammed the door. I stood there, her words echoing. You broke him. My chest felt tight. That night the pain began, not emotional, physical, a pressure in my chest like someone squeezing. My left arm ached, tingled, went numb. Heart attack. I called 911, gave my symptoms, my address, sat down because standing felt impossible. The ambulance arrived quickly. Sirens, lights, neighbors watching. Inside the ambulance, a young EMT checked my blood pressure, connected monitors. You're having a cardiac event, sir. Try to remain calm. Calm? While my son was drinking himself into oblivion, while my daughter-in-law had just told me I had destroyed my family, while my granddaughter was trapped inside a war zone I had created. Was Courtney right? Had I been too harsh? The monitor beeped. The siren wailed. Should I have simply continued paying? Keeping the peace. The ambulance doors swung open. Bright lights. Hospital voices. Everything blurred together. I woke up inside a hospital bed, machines beeping. 4 in my arm. Bill Thompson sitting beside me holding my hand. You scared the hell out of me, Bill said. What time is it? Midnight. You've been here 6 hours. Stress-induced cardiac event. Not a full heart attack, but close. They're keeping you overnight. Brandon is not your problem right now. Vincent, stress is killing you. Literally. The doctor said if you don't manage this, the next one could be fatal. I closed my eyes. I don't know what else to do. Courtney said, I don't care what Courtney said. She's been draining you for years. Bill squeezed my hand. You gave Brandon a chance to be human, to stand up, to face what he had done. That's all a father can do. But he has to take it. You can't take it for him. What if he doesn't? What if he simply falls? Then he falls. And you'll be there when, if he's ready to climb back up. But you can't go down there with him. You'll both drown. Bill stayed until I fell asleep, or pretended to. At 2 in the morning I was still awake. Hospital rooms don't let you sleep. Too many beeps, too much light, too many thoughts chasing circles. My phone lit up. Text message. Lily. Grandpa. I'm so scared. Mom packed her bags and left. Dad's been drinking and won't talk to me. Can I please come live with you? I don't know what else to do. My hands shaking, I typed slowly. Me? Yes, sweetheart. I'll have Uncle Bill pick you up tomorrow morning. Pack whatever you need. You're coming home to Grandpa. I love you. 3 dots appeared, disappeared, appeared again. Lily. Thank you. I love you too. I'll be ready. I set the phone down, stared at the ceiling, felt something shift in my chest that had nothing to do with cardiac events. For 3 weeks I had been cutting away, pruning, removing everything dead and diseased from my life, watching relationships burn, watching my son collapse, watching my own health deteriorate. And I wondered if I was doing the right thing, if tough love was simply cruelty with better PR. If boundaries were just abandonment. But in that hospital bed reading Lily's text, I finally understood. I hadn't been destroying Brandon's family. I had been clearing the rubble so something real could grow. Brandon's marriage had been built on lies and money and blackmail. His career had been built on someone else's funding. His entire life had been a house of cards I had been holding up, too afraid to let go because I thought the fall would kill him. But the fall wasn't killing him. The not falling was. And within all that destruction, within all that burning and cutting and falling away, there was Lily, 16 years old, innocent, trapped in a war she never started, asking her grandfather if she could come home. Not to the mansion. Not to private school and Range Rovers. Home. To the row house in Fishtown with the cracked formica and the 22-year-old refrigerator. To safety, to stability, to someone who loved her for who she was. That was worth it. All of it. Every hard boundary, every canceled payment, every night of guilt and doubt. Because Lily was the seedling in the ashes, and if I had to burn down everything else to make sure she had room to grow, then that was what I'd do. I closed my eyes and finally slept. Tomorrow Bill would pick her up, bring her here to this home that was paid for and simple and real, and we would start again. The two of us, grandfather and granddaughter, building something that didn't require my bank account to hold it together. Just love. Bill's Civic pulled up shortly after 3 Saturday afternoon. I was still moving slowly, doctor's orders, but the sight of Lily on my porch with 2 large suitcases made my heart do something the hospital wouldn't have approved of. She was wearing jeans and a Shipley sweatshirt, hair in a ponytail. When she saw me, she ran straight into my arms. "Grandpa," she whispered. "I told Dad I wanted to live with you. He said okay. Said he's not capable of taking care of me right now. That you're the only person he trusts." Something cracked inside my chest. "You're home now," I said. "You're safe." Bill carried the suitcases upstairs, gave Lily a gentle pat. "Call if you need anything, kiddo." "And Vincent," doctor said, "rest." "I mean it." "I will." Bill left with a wave, and suddenly it was just us, me and my granddaughter, standing in front of the house where Brandon grew up. "Come on," I said. "Let me show you your room." Lily had visited before, brief stops during those years when I was funding their life, quick hugs before Courtney honked from the driveway. But she'd never really seen it, never lived inside it. Now, walking through with her suitcases, I watched her take it in with new eyes. The worn couch Kathy and I bought secondhand in 1992. The television from 2010. The coffee table with water rings and a crack from when Brandon crashed into it practicing skateboard tricks indoors. The faded carpet. Not fancy, but clean. Paid for. And hers now. "It's quieter than I remember," Lily said. "No dishwasher running. No music in 3 rooms. Just us. I like it. It feels safe. That's because it is. I led her upstairs. 3 bedrooms, 1 bathroom, my room, the guest room I used for storage. And at the end of the hall I opened the door. Brandon's room. I hadn't changed it in 24 years. The twin bed with the blue comforter Kathy bought when Brandon was 12. The desk where he'd done homework. Where I'd helped with 5th grade math. Where he'd written college essays. The bookshelf with Hardy Boys novels and old textbooks. On the dresser covered in dust were soccer trophies. 5 of them. Brandon had played from ages 8 to 13. Most were participation awards, but one said Most Improved Player 1995. On the wall his high school diploma. Brandon Michael Carter, Fishtown High School, class of 2000. 24 years ago. Lily walked in slowly, touching things gently. She picked up the smallest trophy and wiped the dust with her sleeve. Dad played soccer. He did. Was pretty good. Loved being part of a team. I sat on the bed, suddenly tired. Your dad had a lot of good in him, Lily. Still does. He just got lost. She turned, eyes wet. Can I really stay here? This is your home now for as long as you need it. Even though it's my fault that you and Dad fought. If I hadn't needed private school, stop. I took her hands. None of this is your fault. You didn't make your father steal. You didn't make your mother leave. You're the only innocent person in this mess. But you didn't need private school. Your parents wanted it. Big difference. I squeezed her hands. Public school will be fine. Your dad went to Fishtown High. I went there. We turned out okay. She smiled, small but real. Okay is pretty good. Okay is excellent. We spent the next hour unpacking. Lily's clothes in the dresser that once held Brandon's, her books on the shelf, her makeup bag in the bathroom we'd share. Small conversations filled the spaces. Not this drawer for socks. Perfect. That one for shirts. What time do you eat breakfast? Around 7. Too early. No, I catch the bus at 8:15. I'll drive you at least the first few weeks. You don't have to. I want to. She relaxed, beginning to believe this was real. We talked about house rules. Be safe. Let me know where you are. Do homework. About dinner. She liked spaghetti. Hated Brussels sprouts. About laundry day Sundays. About the piano downstairs that still worked if she wanted to learn. These conversations mattered. Not mortgages due or tuition bounced. Just what do you like for breakfast? Scrambled eggs and toast. Not too much butter. Now I knew. By the time we finished the sun was setting. Golden light through the window made everything soft and warm. Lily sat on the bed and looked around at the trophies, at the diploma, at her clothes in the drawers. Thank you, Grandpa, she said quietly, for not giving up on us. I didn't give up on you, sweetheart. Never could. She nodded, then reached into the bottom of her suitcase, the one we had just emptied. Her hand disappeared into the corner. When it came back out, she was holding something wrapped in an old t-shirt. She unwrapped it slowly. A piggy bank. Ceramic pink, the kind you cannot open without breaking. It had a small chip on one ear. Bigger than I expected. Heavier. The kind that could hold years of allowance. Lily held it in her lap with both hands protecting it. Her thumb traced the chipped ear. Can I show you this, Grandpa? She asked. Her voice was soft, shy, like she was sharing something secret. I sat beside her. Of course, sweetheart, I said, still watching. Lily sat on the edge of the bed and I sat beside her. The piggy bank rested between us on the faded quilt. Can I show you now, Grandpa? She asked, her voice barely above a whisper. I nodded. Of course, sweetheart. She lifted it over her head and brought it down hard against the wooden floor. The crack was sharp and final. Ceramic shards scattered across the hardwood and coins spilled everywhere. Quarters, dimes, nickels rolling under the bed and into the corners. Dollar bills flooded out, crumpled and soft from years inside that narrow slot. But it wasn't the money that made me freeze. It was the folded paper. Lily picked it up, carefully smoothing out the creases before handing it to me. Her hands were shaking and I could see tears already forming in her eyes. The paper was lined notebook paper, the kind with 3 holes punched on the side. At the top, in Lily's careful handwriting, were the words "beach trip with Grandpa." Below that was a budget, a real budget written in blue ink with neat columns. Hotel 2 nights $240. Train tickets round trip $86. Boardwalk games $50. Ice cream lots $40. Crab dinner $120. Souvenirs $60. Emergency fund $100. Miscellaneous $434. At the bottom underlined 3 times total budget $1,130. And beside it in red pen that looked newer than the rest saved so far $1,847. I stared at those numbers. My throat closed. I looked at Lily and she was crying now, tears running down her cheeks. "You promised me when I was 8, she said, her voice breaking. "You said we'd go to Cape May together. Just you and me. We'd walk on the beach at sunrise and eat crabs with our hands and you'd teach me how to find the best shells." I remembered. God help me. I remembered. It was summer 6 years ago. We had been sitting on my porch drinking lemonade and Lily asked what the ocean felt like. I told her about Cape May, about how Kathy and I used to take Brandon there when he was small before everything became complicated. I promised her we would go someday soon, but someday never came. Every time I brought it up, Lily continued wiping her face with the back of her hand. "Mom would say you were too busy, or Dad would say we were going somewhere better, Disney World or a cruise or some resort with a spa. But I didn't want those trips, Grandpa. I wanted Cape May. I wanted to go with you." Her voice cracked and she had to stop and breathe before she could keep going. So I started saving. Every birthday when Grandma sent me a card with $20, every Christmas when Uncle Ray gave me $50. Every week when Dad gave me allowance for doing chores, I put it all in there. She gestured at the broken pieces of ceramic and the coins still scattered across the floor. Every single dollar. She looked down at her hands, twisting them together in her lap. I didn't buy the new iPhone when my old one stopped working right. I told Mom the screen was fine, even though it had cracks. I didn't get the designer sneakers all my friends were wearing. I wore the hand-me-downs from my cousin and told everyone I liked them better anyway. A sob escaped her and she covered her mouth. "Because I wanted to take you somewhere, Grandpa. Everyone always said you were the one who paid for everything. You gave and nobody ever gave anything back. And I wanted to give you something. Something that was mine." I sat there holding that piece of notebook paper, staring at her round, careful numbers. 6 years. She'd been saving for 6 years. Since she was 8 years old. For a 14-year-old, that was everything. Every birthday, every Christmas, every bit of allowance she'd ever earned, folding laundry or washing dishes or whatever small tasks Brandon had given her, not spent on herself, saved for me. I looked at the coins on the floor, quarters and dimes and nickels, the humble currency of childhood. I looked at the crumpled dollar bills. I looked at her budget written and rewritten as prices changed. As she learned more about what things cost, my hands started to shake. Numbers flooded my mind. Automatic payments, $19,200 every single month for 6 years. I'd given Brandon everything, my retirement, Kathy's life insurance, my home equity. I'd burned through over $1 million to keep him comfortable, and he'd stolen $75,000 on top of it. He'd gambled it away. He'd bought things he didn't need to impress people who didn't care. He'd let Courtney spend thousands on jewelry and designer bags. And when the money finally stopped, he'd called me selfish. He'd called me cruel. He'd accused me of destroying his family. He'd never once said thank you. But this child, this beautiful, selfless child, had spent 6 years giving up every small joy a teenager wants. No new phone, no trendy shoes, no trips to the mall with friends. She'd saved every dollar, every quarter, every dime. Not for herself, for me. Because she'd seen me give everything to everyone, and she'd wanted to give something back. Not because she owed me, not because she wanted something in return, but because she loved me. "Lily," I whispered. She looked up at me, her face red and streaked with tears. "You didn't have to do this," I said, barely able to get the words out. "I know," she said quietly. "But I wanted to. You deserved it, Grandpa. You deserve someone to take care of you for once." Something inside me broke. I set the paper down on the bed and pulled her into my arms. She buried her face in my shoulder and I held her tight, feeling her small frame shake with sobs. And then I cried. Really cried. For the first time in years, I let everything go, the exhaustion, the betrayal, the humiliation, the crushing weight of giving and giving until there was nothing left. I cried for Kathy, who died believing our son would become the man she'd raised him to be. I cried for the 35 years I'd spent carrying mail in the rain and snow, for the $1 million I'd poured into a hole that never filled. I cried for every boundary I'd never set. Every time I'd said yes when I should have said no. But most of all, I cried because of this child in my arms. This child who'd seen my worth when no one else had. Who'd loved me the right way. Who'd given up iPhones and designer shoes and all the things her friends had just to save enough money to take her grandfather to the beach. $1,300,000 hadn't bought me a damn thing. It had bought dependency and entitlement and theft. It had bought resentment disguised as love. But $1,847 had bought back my soul. I pulled back and looked at Lily cupping her tear-stained face in my hands. "We're going," I said, my voice steady now. "Next weekend, you and me. Cape May. We'll stay in the nicest hotel on that list. We'll eat crabs until we're sick. We'll walk the beach at sunrise and find shells and ride every ride on the boardwalk twice." She started to protest, "But Grandpa," I saved. I shook my head. "Your money is going into a real savings account for college or your first car or whatever dream you have down the road. But this trip, this one's on me because you've already given me everything that matters." She threw her arms around my neck and held on tight. I looked down at the broken pieces of the piggy bank scattered across the floor, at the coins and crumpled bills that represented 6 years of sacrifice. Everyone else had loved my wallet, but Lily had loved me, and that made all the difference in the world. Healing doesn't arrive with trumpets and fanfare. It comes quietly on a Saturday morning when your granddaughter burns pancakes and you eat them like they're caviar. I sat at my kitchen table watching Lily scrape blackened batter off the griddle, her tongue sticking out in concentration. The smoke alarm had gone off twice. She turned to me with an apologetic grin, flour smudged across her cheek. "They're perfect," I said, cutting into the charred disc on my plate. And somehow they were because she'd made them. Because she was here. Because for the first time in 6 years, my kitchen felt like a home. The new normal came in small moments like these. Monday through Friday, I drove the Civic to Northeast High School. No more Shipley uniforms. No more luxury SUVs in the parking lot. Just regular kids in hoodies and sneakers. On the third day, as Lily buckled her seatbelt, she looked at me and said, "It's nice, Grandpa. Just being a regular kid. Nobody cares what shoes I'm wearing. They just see me." Her voice was so light, like she'd been carrying a weight I hadn't known about and had finally set it down. I reached over and squeezed her hand. "You were always just you, sweetheart." She smiled, a real smile that reached her eyes. We fell into a rhythm, breakfast together, homework at the kitchen table, while I cooked dinner, old movies on Friday nights with popcorn. The house was fuller than it had been in years, even though it was just the two of us. I didn't hear from Brandon, not for 5 weeks. I told myself it was better that way, that he needed to figure out his own life without my checkbook. But late at night when the house was quiet, I'd wonder where he was, if he was eating, if he was sober. Then on a Sunday morning in late November, there was a knock at my door. Brandon stood on my porch looking different, thinner, his face gaunt in a way that aged him, but his eyes were clearer. His clothes were clean, jeans and a gray hoodie. Nothing designer. His hands weren't shaking. "Hi, Dad," he said quietly. I stood there, hand on the doorknob, waiting. He reached into his pocket and pulled out something small. A plastic chip with 30 days printed in gold letters. He held it out like an offering. "Gamblers Anonymous," he said. "I've been going every day. 30 days clean, no bets, no casinos, nothing." I took the chip. It was warm from his pocket, light and weightless. But I saw what it meant. 30 days of choosing not to gamble. 30 days of sitting in a church basement admitting what he'd done. 30 days of crawling forward. "I'm working at Target," he continued. Voice steady but quiet. "On Roosevelt Boulevard, stocking shelves, $16 an hour. It's not much, but it's honest." I looked up at him. "I sold the Porsche. Got $18,000. I wired it to your account last week. I know it's not close to what I took, but it's a start. I'm going to pay back every dollar, Dad, even if it takes the rest of my life." Part of me wanted to pull him inside to forgive everything right there, but another part, the part that had been burned too many times, held back. "Come in," I said finally. He hesitated like he wasn't sure he'd heard right. Then he crossed the threshold. We sat in the living room. I made coffee, black for both of us. The silence was heavy but not hostile. The silence of two people who didn't know where to start. "How's Lily?" he asked. "She's good, at a birthday party right now." He nodded, jaw tightening. "Does she hate me?" I looked at him and saw the fear. Not fear of losing money or status. Fear of losing his daughter's love. "No," I said, "she doesn't hate you. She's confused. She's hurt, but she doesn't hate you." He looked down, blinking hard. "I want to see her," he said, voice breaking. "Not to take her back. I know I don't deserve that, but just to talk, to tell her I'm sorry, to show her I'm trying." I set my coffee down. "You can see her here, with me present. She's not ready for more than that, and neither am I. But if you keep showing up, really showing up, we'll figure it out." Relief flooded his face. "Thank you. Thank you, Dad." "Don't thank me," I said. "Thank yourself if you keep going." "That chip." I nodded toward it on the table. "That's just the first one. You've got a lot more to earn." "I know," he said. "I will. I promise." I wanted to believe him. God, I wanted to. When he stood to leave an hour later, I walked him to the door. He turned back on the porch and for a moment, I saw the boy he used to be. The kid who'd helped me rake leaves, the teenager who'd called from college just to hear my voice. "I'm taking the bus," he said, nodding toward the street. 3 transfers to get home. Gives me time to think. I watched him walk down the cracked sidewalk toward the bus stop. His shoulders hunched against the cold, hands in his pockets. No luxury car, no driver, just my son walking to catch public transit. And as I stood there, I realized something. I'd rather have a son who stocked shelves at Target with integrity than a financial director living in a mansion built on lies. The bus pulled up. Brandon climbed aboard. I closed the door and went back inside, where the coffee was still warm and Lily's burnt pancakes sat on the counter. It wasn't much, but it was a start. December in Philadelphia. Eagles playoff hopes, roasted chestnuts at Reading Terminal Market. And the first Christmas, I didn't have to bankroll someone else's manufactured perfection. I stood at the entrance of Reading Terminal with Lily beside me, both of us bundled in winter coats that had seen better years. She held a small notepad where she'd written our shopping list in careful handwriting. At the bottom, circled twice, budget $200. Ready? I asked. She grinned up at me. Let's do this, Grandpa. We walked through the crowded market, past the Amish bakers and the fishmongers, past tourists snapping photos and locals arguing about the best cheesesteak in the city. The air smelled like cinnamon and grilled onions and possibility. Lily led the way with her list. A small turkey from the butcher, $45. Fresh rolls from the Amish stand, $8. Green beans, potatoes, cranberry sauce. We calculated every dollar, laughing when we had to put back the fancy stuffing mix and go with the store brand instead. At the decoration stall, Lily picked up a string of lights that had a few bulbs missing. These are on sale, she said, holding them up. Half price because they're not perfect. I looked at those lights, mismatched, imperfect, half price because someone had deemed them not good enough. They're perfect for us, I said. She beamed. By the time we left, we'd spent $197. We carried our bags to the car, and Lily did a little victory dance in the parking lot. We did it, and we still have $3 left for hot chocolate. As we drove home, she looked over at me. This is better than the fancy Christmases, isn't it? I glanced at her. What do you mean? The ones at the big house with the caterers and the photographers Mom hired to take pictures for her social media. Everything had to be perfect. The tree had to be designer. The presents had to be expensive. But nobody was actually happy. She looked down at her hands. This feels real. I reached over and squeezed her shoulder. It is real, sweetheart. This is what Christmas is supposed to feel like. The week leading up to Christmas, Brandon showed up 3 times. Each visit, he looked a little more solid, a little more present. He'd bring his GA meeting schedule to show me or tell me about his shift supervisor at Target, who was teaching him inventory management. On his 3rd visit, I asked him to stay for dinner. We sat at my kitchen table, the same Formica table where I'd calculated how much I'd given him, where I'd realized how much I'd lost. But tonight, it felt different. Brandon helped Lily with her math homework while I made spaghetti. Simple, normal. As we ate, Brandon set down his fork. Dad, I need to tell you something. I waited. The reason I didn't call for so long after everything happened, it wasn't just shame. Courtney was blackmailing me. Lily looked up, her eyes wide. Brandon's jaw tightened. She knew about the money I took from you. She said if I didn't keep giving her what she wanted, she'd report it to the police herself. Make sure I lost custody of Lily. Make sure I went to prison. His voice cracked. I was terrified, so I stayed quiet, kept my head down, tried to figure out how to get clean and get strong enough to fight back. And now I asked, now we're getting divorced. She gave up custody of Lily in exchange for a one-time payment of $5,000. Money I don't have, so I'm paying it off in installments. He looked toward me. I never asked you for it, and I'm not going to start now. This is my problem. I'll fix it myself. I watched him across the table for a moment. There was no calculation in his eyes, no scheme, only fatigue and quiet resolve. Good, I said simply. He nodded, the tension easing from his expression. Christmas Eve arrived cold and bright. Bill Thompson stopped by around 5 carrying a pie his sister had baked. Lily's friend Zoe from school arrived with her mom, who dropped her off with a plate of cookies, and Brandon came on the bus at 6 carrying a worn paper shopping bag. We squeezed around my table, 5 of us, in a kitchen meant for 2. The turkey was slightly dry. The mashed potatoes were lumpy. The string of half-priced lights blinked unevenly above the doorway. It was the finest Christmas I'd had in years. After dinner, while we cleared the plates, Brandon reached into his shopping bag. I didn't have much for gifts this year, he said, looking at Lily. But I wanted to give you something. He handed her a book. It was old. The cover creased and faded. The Phantom Toll Booth. This was mine, he said quietly. When I was your age. Your grandma Kathy read it to me when I was in the hospital with pneumonia. I loved it so much I read it 10 more times on my own. Lily turned it over in her hands, running her fingers over the worn spine. You're giving me your favorite book. Yeah, Brandon said, because you deserve to know that I wasn't always what I became. I used to be a kid who loved stories, who believed in things. I want you to have that part of me. The part that was still good. Lily threw her arms around him and I saw Brandon close his eyes, holding her tight. Then he turned to me. He reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out an envelope, plain white, sealed. This is for you, Dad. I opened it. Inside was a check for $300. In the memo line, he'd written first payment. I stared at it. $300 from a man making $16 an hour, working 40 hours a week, paying rent on a studio apartment, and buying bus passes to get to work. It's not much, Brandon said, his voice low. I know it doesn't even scratch the surface of what I took, but it's honest money. Every dollar I earned on my feet stocking shelves, doing the work. No shortcuts, no schemes. I looked up at him. His eyes were wet. I'm going to keep paying you back, he said. $300 a month. Every month. For as long as it takes. Even if it takes 20 years. Even if I'm old and gray. Because you deserve better than what I gave you. And I'm going to spend the rest of my life trying to make it right. The room was quiet. Bill looked down at his plate. Zoe glanced between us, sensing something important was happening, even if she didn't understand what. I folded the check and put it back in the envelope. Thank you, I said. Brandon exhaled like he'd been holding his breath for months. Later, after everyone had left and Lily was asleep upstairs, I sat alone in my living room. The half-priced lights blinked above the doorway. The leftover turkey sat in Tupperware in the fridge. The envelope with Brandon's check rested on the coffee table in front of me. $300 would never repay $75,000. It wouldn't come close to the $1.3 million I'd spent over 6 years. Mathematically, it was meaningless, but it wasn't about the math. It was about a man who used to steal from me now choosing to pay me back. A man who used to take buses past Target on his way to his corner office, now clocking in for the early shift. A man who used to demand more, now offering what little he had. I picked up the envelope and held it. I'd rather have $300 earned through sweat and dignity than $19,000 taken from shame and entitlement. Because this $300 wasn't just money. It was proof that my son was still in there somewhere, and maybe, just maybe, he was finally finding his way home. The boardwalk at Cape May smells like salt air, funnel cake, and promises kept. I pulled the Civic into the motel parking lot just after noon on a Saturday in late January. The off-season rates had made Lily's budget stretch even further. She'd been bouncing in her seat for the last 20 miles. Her nose pressed against the window, watching for the first glimpse of ocean. There, she shouted, pointing. Grandpa, I can see it. The Atlantic stretched out gray and endless beyond the dunes. Winter waves rolling in, steady and strong. It wasn't the postcard-perfect summer scene most people imagined, but to me it was better, quieter, real. We'd left Philadelphia at 7 that morning. Lily's playlist filling the car. A mix of songs I'd never heard and a few old ones she'd added because she knew I'd like them. She'd asked me to tell her stories as we drove, so I did. About the times I'd brought Brandon here when he was small. About the sandcastles we'd built and the hermit crabs we'd caught. About how Kathy would pack sandwiches and we'd stay on the beach until the sun went down. Dad loved it here, Lily had asked, her voice surprised. He did, I'd said. Before everything got complicated. Before he started measuring worth in dollar signs. She'd gone quiet after that, staring out the window. Now standing in the motel parking lot, she grabbed her backpack and looked up at the building. The Seabreeze Motel wasn't fancy. 2 stories of weathered blue siding, a small pool covered for winter, and a neon sign missing the E in breeze. But Lily's eyes lit up like we'd arrived at a palace. $89 a night, she whispered, clutching her budget sheet. Just like I planned, the room was small, 2 double beds with floral bedspreads, a TV bolted to the dresser, and a view of the parking lot. But when Lily opened the curtains, you could see a sliver of ocean between the buildings across the street. It's perfect, she said, dropping her bag on the bed closest to the window. We changed into warmer clothes and walked down to the boardwalk. January in Cape May meant most shops were closed. The beach nearly empty except for a few locals walking their dogs. But the ocean was still there, vast and unchanging, and Lily ran toward it like she'd been waiting her whole life. I followed slower, hands in my jacket pockets, watching her stop at the water's edge and stare out at the horizon. The wind whipped her hair around her face. She looked small against the endless gray water, but she didn't look afraid. She looked free. "Grandpa," she called back. "Come look." I joined her at the shoreline, and she pointed down at the sand, small shells, bits of sea glass, foam from broken waves washing over our shoes. "You're going to teach me how to find the good shells, right?" "That's the plan." We spent an hour walking the beach, me showing her how to spot the unbroken ones, how to read the tide patterns, how to watch for the pull of the waves. Simple skills, things my father had taught me, things I taught Brandon when he was young, things he'd forgotten somewhere along the way. By 4 o'clock, Lily's pockets were full of shells and sea glass, and we were both hungry. We found a small seafood shack a few blocks off the boardwalk. The kind of place with paper plates, plastic forks, and prices written on a chalkboard. Lily ordered the crab cake sandwich. I got the same. We sat at a picnic table outside, bundled in our coats, eating with our fingers while seagulls circled overhead. "This is exactly what I imagined," Lily said, wiping Old Bay seasoning off her chin. "When I was saving all that money, I used to think about us sitting somewhere like this. Just the two of us. No fancy restaurants where I had to worry about using the right fork. Just this." I looked at her across the table. This 14-year-old girl who'd given up 6 years of small joys to give me one perfect weekend. "You did good, kiddo," I said, my voice thick. After dinner, we walked the boardwalk until the sun started to set. Most of the game arcades were closed, but one was still open, a small place with skee-ball machines and claw games. Lily made a beeline for a crane game filled with stuffed animals. "I'm going to win that crab," she announced, pointing at a bright orange plush crab wedged in the back. "That thing's rigged," I said. "You know that, right?" She grinned. "I don't care. I want it." I handed her a $5 bill. "Go for it." She fed quarters into the machine, her face a mask of concentration as she maneuvered the claw. 3 tries. 4. 5. On the 6th try, the claw grabbed the crab's leg and hauled it up, then dropped it 2 inches from the chute. "One more," she said, determination in her voice. On the 7th try, the claw locked on, swung the crab over, and dropped it perfectly into the chute. Lily let out a victorious yell that made the arcade attendant look up from his phone and grin. She pulled the stuffed crab out and held it up like a trophy. "I'm naming him Clyde. Clyde the crab. Yep. And he's going to sit on my bed forever and remind me of this trip." We walked back to the motel as the street lights flickered on. The temperature was dropping, the wind coming off the ocean sharp and cold, but Lily didn't seem to notice. She walked beside me, clutching Clyde, talking about shells and waves and whether we could come back next year. Back in the room, she showered and changed into her pajamas, then climbed into bed with Clyde tucked under her arm. I sat in the chair by the window, watching her eyes grow heavy. "Thank you, Grandpa," she murmured, half asleep already. "For keeping your promise." "Thank you," I said quietly. "For reminding me what promises are worth." Within minutes, she was asleep, her breathing soft and steady. I stepped out onto the small balcony outside our room. The ocean was dark now, just the sound of waves rolling in and the distant lights of ships on the horizon. The air was cold enough to sting my lungs, but I stayed there anyway, leaning against the railing, looking out at the water. For 6 years, I'd spent $19,200 every month trying to buy happiness for people who didn't know what it looked like. I'd drained my retirement, my savings, my dignity. I'd given everything to build a life for my son that he'd never appreciated and my granddaughter had never wanted. But this $89 motel room, paper plate crab cakes, a stuffed animal won from a rigged crane game, this was worth more than every dollar I'd ever spent because I'd kept a promise. And the look on Lily's face when that crab dropped into the chute was worth more than any mansion, any luxury car, any designer label. I'd finally learned what my father tried to teach me 40 years ago: the most valuable thing a man owns isn't in his bank account, it's his word, and I just spent the best $200 of my life proving it. Dawn broke over the bay on Saturday morning, painting the water pink and gold. I stood on the beach with 2 buckets, a ball of string, and chicken necks from the bait shop. Lily appeared beside me, bundled in her jacket, eyes bright. "I asked, this really how you catch crabs?" she asked. This is how we did it when I was a kid, I said. Just patience, string, and bait. I showed her how to tie the chicken neck, lower it slowly into the shallow water, and wait. The trick is patience, I told her. You can't rush a crab. We stood in the early morning, cold waves lapping at our feet. 5 minutes passed. 10. Lily shifted, impatient. How long does it take? As long as it takes, I said. Good things don't come fast. Then I feel something, Lily whispered. Pull it up slow and steady. A blue crab clung to the chicken neck, claws up defiant. She squealed as I lifted it into the bucket. I did it, Grandpa. I did it. We caught 3 more that morning. None were large enough to keep, so we let them go. But Lily didn't care. She caught a crab with her own hands. Later, walking the beach collecting shells, Lily grew quiet. Grandpa, she said finally, do you think you'll ever forgive Dad? Like, really forgive him? I looked at the waves rolling in one after another. I'm trying, I said. And your dad is working hard to deserve that. Right now, that's enough. I think he's really trying this time, she said. He looks different. I know, I said. And that's what matters. Not who he was, who he's becoming. She took my hand and we walked back to the motel. We checked out at noon. Lily clutched Clyde the crab, her backpack rattling with shells. She fell asleep near Atlantic City, a small smile on her face. I drove through southern New Jersey, then back into Philadelphia. Fishtown looked the same. Row houses pressed close, neighbors on their steps in the January cold. Home. As I unlocked the door, I noticed a box on the porch. Plain brown cardboard, no label. Inside was a picture frame wrapped in newspaper. The Christmas Eve photo. All 6 of us around my kitchen table. Bill with his arm around me. Zoe laughing. Brandon and Lily side by side. Me at the head. My hand on the half-priced lights. Proof the moment had been real. Tucked in the frame was a folded note. Brandon's handwriting shaky but clear. Dad, 90 days sober, 90 days no gambling. I registered for a business ethics class at community college, night classes twice a week. I'm working toward getting custody of Lily back, not now. I'm not ready, but someday I want to be the kind of father you were the kind of man Mom believed I could be. I hope one day you'll be proud of me again. Love, Brandon. 90 days. 3 months of choosing differently, 3 months of stocking shelves and attending meetings and sitting in classrooms. It wasn't enough to erase $75,000. It wasn't enough to undo 6 years of exploitation. But it was a start. I set the frame on the mantel beside Kathy's photo. I hope I'm doing this right, I said to her picture. But he's trying. Lily came downstairs, Clyde under her arm. Whose picture is that? Ours, I said. Your dad brought it by. She studied it. We look happy. We were. I said we are. 10 months passed like that. Small moments, steady progress. One Tuesday morning in November, I sat at my kitchen table. Lily's backpack hung by the door. The Cape May photo stuck to the fridge. The half-priced Christmas lights still strung overhead because Lily wanted them year-round. My bank account, $64,000, not much for a man who once had over $1 million, but I felt richer than I ever had. The mail came, bills, junk, and a plain envelope with Brandon's handwriting. The 8th payment, a check for $300. Memo line, payment. 8 of 8 months, 8 payments, $2,400 total against $75,000. It was nothing, but it was everything. I tore the check in half, then in half again. Dropped the pieces in the trash. Brandon didn't need the weight of impossible debt anymore. He'd paid me back in ways that mattered more. By showing up sober every Sunday, by taking Lily to the park, by learning ethics in community college classrooms, by stocking shelves at Target with his head up. That was worth more than $75,000, more than the $1.3 million I'd spent over 6 years. He was becoming a man his mother would recognize. That afternoon, Lily came home with college brochures. Temple has a good social work program, she said. Maybe I could help families like ours, the ones that get lost. My throat tightened. That's a beautiful dream. And I could stay here with you, commute instead of dorms. You don't have to. I know, she said. But I want to stay where there's real love. I took her hand. Then you stay as long as you want. That evening, Brandon called. Dad, I got promoted. Shift supervisor. They said I'm reliable. They said they trust me. His voice broke. I'm proud of you, I said. I'm trying, Dad. Every day. I know you are, son. After he hung up, I sat alone looking at the two photos on the mantel. Kathy and one of all of us at Christmas, and the other I thought about the old math. $19,200 a month. $1,382,400 over 6 years, $172 payments to people who never said thank you, but tonight, I did different math. $64,000 in savings, a house filled with laughter, a granddaughter who chose love over luxury, a son learning to stand burnt pancakes. Kate made promises kept by any measure that actually matters. I was the richest man in Philadelphia. The measure of a man isn't in his bank account. It's not in his car or house or paycheck. It's in his word, his presence, whether he shows up when it's hard. I failed that test for years. I thought providing meant giving money. I thought love looked like luxury. But love looks like burnt pancakes, like an $89 motel room, like a stuffed crab named Clyde, like a son on a city bus working an honest job, becoming the man he should have been. I walked upstairs and knocked on Lily's door, just wanted to say good night. She hugged me. Love you. Love you too, sweetheart. I headed to bed. The same bed I'd had for 20 years, the same quilt Kathy's mother made. And as I closed my eyes, I realized I may not have much money left, but I have everything that matters and by any measure worth counting, that makes me the richest man alive. Looking back at my story, I see a man who confused family betrayal with love, who mistook enabling for support. I gave $1.3 million trying to buy respect, only to learn that real wealth can't be deposited in a bank. Don't be like me. Don't wait until you're 64 to understand that boundaries aren't walls. They're bridges to healthier relationships. Grandpa stories like mine aren't meant to inspire pity. There are lessons in what I learned too late. Love without accountability isn't love at all. The hardest lesson. Sometimes the most loving thing you can do is say no. When I finally cut off the money, I didn't abandon Brandon. I gave him the chance to find himself. Family betrayal cuts deep, but enabling cuts deeper. It took my son stealing $75,000 and my granddaughter heartbreaking before I understood the difference. My faith taught me that God doesn't call us to be ATMs for our children. He calls us to be fathers, present, firm, and loving enough to let them fall so they can learn to rise. Grandpa stories should end with wisdom earned, not regrets rehearsed. Here's mine: measure your worth by your word, not your wallet. The richest inheritance isn't money, it's the example of a man who loved well and knew when to let go. Family betrayal taught me that sometimes you save people by refusing to save them. Choose differently, choose sooner, choose wisely. Thank you for walking this journey with me. Drop a comment. What would you do in Vincent's shoes? Torn between love and tough choices, I want to hear your perspective. If this story touched you, consider subscribing so you don't miss what comes next. Quick disclaimer: while inspired by real family dynamics, some elements have been dramatized for storytelling purposes. If this isn't your preference, feel free to explore other content. Suddenly I knew Brandon's investment opportunities he'd mentioned over the years. The ones that never quite succeeded. The tech startup that collapsed. The real estate deal that disappeared. All those times he called asking for just a little more to break even. And Courtney, the jewelry I'd noticed her wearing at that last dinner. The pieces that seemed to appear out of nowhere. The designer handbags, the spa weekends she posted about online. They hadn't only been living off my monthly support. They had been stealing more, lying more, hiding more. And I never checked. Never questioned. Never studied the statements closely enough because I trusted him. Because he was my son. Thank you, Mark, I said quietly, for discovering this. What do you want to do? I looked at the detective's card. One call. I need to think. I didn't drive home. I drove through Fishtown across the river toward the main line, but not to Benmar. I went to Ardmore, to the small rental apartment complex where Mrs. Washington's sister said Brandon and Courtney had moved after losing the house. Building C, Unit 2B. A far cry from the mansion with motion sensor lights and perfectly trimmed boxwoods. I sat in my car in the parking lot staring at the building. Second floor, left side. I could see a light glowing behind the curtains. The detective's card rested in my hand. I kept turning it over again and again. Front back, front back. One call. My son had stolen from me. Not just taken what I willingly gave. Not just accepted too much. He had deliberately secretly stolen $75,000 while I trusted him with power of attorney. While I granted him access to my accounts because he was my son. And I believed him. I pulled out my phone, started to dial, stopped, started again, stopped. If Kathy were here, but she wasn't. She rested in a grave at Holy Sepulchre Cemetery beneath a headstone that read beloved wife and mother. The insurance money meant to secure my future was gone. The money her father left her, the man who worked at the Navy Yard for 40 years, was gone. The savings we built together, penny by penny, paycheck by paycheck, gone. And not only spent supporting Brandon's life. Spent supporting his lies. He stole from us love, I whispered to the dashboard, to the empty air, to wherever Kathy might hear me. Our son is a thief. Not simply a dependent adult child. Not merely a man who never learned independence. A thief. Someone who looked at his father's trust and saw opportunity. Who used legal access to drain accounts. Who lied about where money went. Who stabbed me in the back while I slept. The anger came then, hot and clear and absolute. My hands trembled on the steering wheel. I wanted to call Detective Morrison. Wanted to see Brandon's face when police arrived. Wanted him to learn what consequences meant in the real world, not the soft, protected world I created for him. I sat there 20 minutes watching that lit window, imagining making that call, imagining not making it, imagining what Kathy might say. She would be heartbroken. But she would not be shocked because Kathy noticed it long before I did. She saw Brandon's entitlement growing. Saw the way money replaced effort. She tried warning me. Vincent, she said more than once, you are not helping him. You are crippling him. And I ignored her because saying no felt like failing to love him. Now here I was with proof that my love hadn't only crippled him. It had corrupted him. The detective's card weighed almost nothing. It could have been a feather. It could have been an anvil. One call. That was all it required. But if I called immediately, if I went straight to criminal charges, I would never hear the truth. Never hear him admit it. Never allow him the chance to explain, to beg forgiveness, to face what he had done. And I needed that. I needed to look into his eyes and show him the numbers. Needed him to see what he had taken. Needed him to understand that I knew everything. Every lie, every theft, every betrayal. I placed the card in my pocket. I did not call. Not yet. But I kept it because maybe mercy has limits. Maybe love has boundaries. Maybe forgiveness requires confession first. I stepped out of the car, walked across the parking lot, climbed the stairs, and moved down the hallway that smelled of old carpet and someone's dinner cooking. Unit 2B. I could hear a television inside. Voices. Brandon's. Courtney's. Normal voices, like nothing had happened, like they had not systematically stolen from the man who gave them everything. I raised my hand and knocked. Not the way I knocked on their Benmar door 3 weeks earlier, holding cheesesteaks and hope. Not the way I stood on that porch waiting to be welcomed, waiting to be wanted. This time I knocked like someone who had every right to stand there. Because this time I was not asking for anything. This time I was bringing the truth, and Brandon would answer for it. The door opened. Brandon stood there wearing stained sweatpants, a dirty t-shirt, and unkempt beard smelling of stale beer. This was my son, investment banker's 6-figure salary. This was what remained. Dad. His voice cracked. Not surprise. Acceptance. We need to talk. I walked past him into the apartment. Small shoebox. Tiny couch. Television on a folding table. Dishes stacked in the sink. The kind of place you rent after losing everything. I pulled the bank statements from my jacket and dropped them on the coffee table. Explain. $75,000. Where did it go? Brandon stared at the papers, then back at me. His face shifted through denial, panic, defeat. Then he collapsed to his knees. His legs simply failed. Dad, he couldn't finish. Where did it go? Gambling. The word came out muffled through his hands. Online gambling. I had a problem. Still have a problem. How long? 2 years. Started with football betting. Small stuff. Then poker sites. And his voice broke. I couldn't stop. Every time I lost, I thought I could win it back. It kept getting worse. I stood there looking down at my 42-year-old son on his knees on stained carpet. Sports betting, he continued. High stakes. I was down 30,000. Thought I could make it back, but the house always wins. And I kept taking more. Using the power of attorney to withdraw cash, lying about where it went.